Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show. This is Ursula for a fabulous edition of the Ottawa Book Expo. So, as you know, our main event will take place from the 26th to the 28th of August 2022 at Lansdowne Park. So, mark your calendars and save these dates. And as you know, at the Ottawa Book Expo, we celebrate successful authors, editors, chefs, and entrepreneurs. And today it's my honor to introduce you to my special guest, Dr. Bruce Hutchison. Thank you, Doctor, for being here with us and have accepted our invitation.
Hi, thank you, Ursula. I'm pleased to be here.
Thank you so much. So Dr. Bruce Hutchison, you have a PhD in clinical psychology, and after 50 years of practice as a clinical psychologist, you retired and became an author. This is why we are here today. And your book, Emotions Don't Think, Emotional Contagion in a Time of Turmoil, was published in August 2021, so last year. In this book, you discuss how we can feel attached, right, by external events, especially nowadays with all the social and societal events, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes, yes.
And well, in all this emotional turmoil, you deal with how we can get carried away and ultimately feel bad. You also explain how, well, the phenomenon actually, and you give hints on how to get out of it. So I'm curious, actually, what is it about psychology and the understanding of the human being that fascinates you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I became interested in psychology when I was an undergraduate, and I realized that behavior is what triggers the problems that we have in life, in society, and politics, and relationships. And because if people behave in a reasonable way, then there's no problems, right? But because behavior can be problematic, we have social problems, we have political problems, we have relationship problems, and behavior comes from emotions and thoughts and feelings and relationships and all these aspects that cause it. So if we don't understand behavior and the emotions, then we don't understand what goes on. Now, this can be a problem in the world of politics and political science. For example, the concept of populism is one that has been called a sociological movement, where people, get involved in uprisings and start to take over popularity and of certain trends and topics. Sure, that's true, but behind that is an emotion. Behind that uprising is an emotion, and so if you don't have the emotion, you don't have the uprising. So it's calling it a social phenomenon stops the understanding at a social level, when really there's lower levels than that. You can go down to the level of emotion, which exists at an individual level, and then it exists through emotional contagion in a more social level. So you have what I call the collective subconscious, which involves emotions in the social arena. And that's what I write about here.
I like the fact that you say the behavior, because we're all asking why I'm acting like this, why I think like that, but it all comes from the emotion. And when you understand this, you can, well, take control of yourself, and you explain that very well, actually.
Yeah. When you have the emotion that way, you're able to work on controlling it. Some people would balk at the idea, why would I want to control my emotions? Because emotions don't think, as I say in my book, right? And so
awesome. Thank you for showing the cover of your wonderful book.
Yeah. So, but on the other hand, emotions are positive, they're good, they're helpful, they give us joy, they give us pleasure. And so we need the emotions in our life. And, but psychologists like myself work on the idea of regulating our emotions, managing our emotions. We know ourselves that we just can't go to a hissy fit at any given moment and start to berate a cashier at the store because they're charging too much, right? Even though you might feel very angry. And so we manage to control our emotions in order to become more civil, let's say. So we can do different ways of managing and modulating our emotions, regulating our emotions, but we don't do that sometimes in politics, in society, when you have protests and riots and mobs and insurrection attempts. And so my book is designed to focus on lowering the turmoil in society. You can't have turmoil without emotions. And yet people don't write about emotions. They write about turmoil. They write about protests. They write about deaths. They write about political police brutality and all these things. They all involve emotions.
Yes, right.
Right?
Exactly.
And yet people don't pick up the topic of emotions because it seems kind of nebulous. And well, certainly the problem is that emotions are invisible. You can't see the emotion,
No,
but
right.
you can feel it, right?
Exactly.
And a lot of emotion is comes from the what we call the implicit emotion is from the background, the subconscious, the underlying level of the individual or in society, so that that a lot of emotions come out in the voice and in the gestures and in the behavior. And when we're talking about emotions, we're talking about affect, we're talking about not the obvious, you know, outward overt emotions, well, that counts too, but we're also talking about, you know, the smaller, what's in the more subtle emotions. You know, people can be still and not do much, but there's movement in the stillness. There's emotion in the stillness. And so it can come out and people can fester, people can beam, people can be happy, but they're not doing much, but you can sense it.
Yes, it's well said. It's well said because emotions are always there. We are beings with emotions anyway, but being
Yeah.
still, yes, someone can be extremely happy, but looks very calm, quiet, and still it's kind of controlling the emotions, right?
Yeah. So,
Perfect.
but the problem is, or the point here is that emotions are contagious. So the emotion can rub off on people. The phenomenon of emotional contagion has been out there now for a few years, and also especially in the area of social media, where social media is very prone to become involved in these emotional contagious situations. It seems easy to be emotional in the anonymous situation because in social media, people have nicknames. They don't call themselves by their real name often, and there's no police involved. At least there hasn't been anyway, but sometimes they're cracking down. People get banned from Twitter now. So we're getting to that point, I think, of having that happen. But it certainly is unfortunate. People get very emotional, and because they don't have a face in front of them, they don't have a person in front of them, even with you on the screen. That helps because I know I see what you look like, and so that's nice, but I can't touch you. So that's another area of distance, right? And so those are things that the human body is not ready for. The human body was sort of designed for the caveman days when, you know, we have wild animals chasing us. And so that's what we're designed to do, and to run away, and as a flight or fight phenomenon. And that's what happens. So with emotions, they affect us politically so much that you have all these problems that come up.
And that's very interesting because you speak a lot, well, you deal a lot with political events, social events, especially the past 2 years. That's what you write on your blog. So I invite people to watch your blog too. I'll give all the information. those events create a lot of anxiety, especially, as I said, the past 2 years. And it is generally believed and suggested by positive thinking coaches to not watch the news, like being detached from those all events and from the
Right,
news,
right.
So at some point, it helps to be detached from external events. But what about the internal noise that people have? Because even if we don't watch the news or are not, with people, we are with ourselves, and there's still this noise. What about
Yeah,
that? As an expert, what's your advice?
yeah. By noise, do you mean the personal thoughts and the emotions inside oneself that can be troubling and that kind of thing? Yeah, and it can also be other ways that in small groups where that can be a problem and people have disputes or on disagreements and so on. So emotions have been spiked in the last 2 years and even into the past even more. I think that some of these issues in society have been creeping up over the past decade or 2 decades since 9/11 and maybe even before that. So, and now it's reaching its crescendo and we're dealing with it. So, but people, as you say, are left over with their own internal noise. And um, that's where it's important to work on thinking about your own thoughts and emotions in a way that you don't automatically react to them. Okay, we have 60,000 thoughts a day, 60,000 thoughts a day. So, and so they cannot all be true. We have many automatic thoughts that come into our mind automatically. So as a result, it goes without saying that we shouldn't react to them. Okay, we have to think about, is that thought reasonable or not? Is that thought accurate or not? Is that thought correct or not? And learn from our thoughts and our feelings that are there behind. So we don't want to just react to the emotion we have. We want to don't let the emotion take over our thoughts either. But appreciate our emotion and listen to it and let the mind take some direction about where to go with it.
I'd like to come back to something that you just said. Listening, you said that the thoughts are not necessarily true or wrong, but how do you know if your thoughts or emotions are true or not true? Because you feel it, right? And you think
Yeah.
about it. So how do you do the difference?
Yeah. Well, check the evidence. In cognitive behavioral therapy, we say, check the evidence to see whether the thought is true or not. People use adjectives a lot. You can say, this is the greatest place on earth. Now, I say in my book, you can't quantify great. So, you can't measure great. If you go down to the US, say every state is the greatest state. That's not possible, right?
True.
50 states that are all great, the greatest state. Whenever you have these kinds of words like that, that's an emotional word. It feels good. So you have to realize, okay, can you count them? Can you count what you're saying? If you say, I'm the best, person around, well, that feels good, but there's no such thing as the best person. How do you quantify that? How do you put that into numbers? Does it count by money, or does it count by education, or does it count by good looks? Or how many people you know? Who knows what the best way is to count what the best person is?
Yeah, I
So
like that.
it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling, but it's just so many people around you. Have you counted the whole population of Canada, 36 million? How do you know who the best one is? It's not
True.
possible. So you check your own thoughts, and then you can see whether or not it's reasonable or not.
Perfect. Thank you for this clarification. And I would like to quote a phrase, a sentence that you said. So I'm going to read it right now. So emotionality drives politics these days. Emotions are contagious, and emotional contagion is one of the most powerful forces at play in society and in politics in the last few decades. So as we just said, so building to the crescendo of the last few years, emotions stir and vibrate in our bodies in response to others, including to politicians, and many of us incorporate them into our world and our life. As a result, emotions have been on edge, anxiety and depression have increased. Now, my question, movies, politics, well, everything around us, actually, like a lot of influences use the power of emotions to create a reaction, right? As you say, riots and everything. But as we see and as you say, they create more negative emotions.
Yeah.
Well, my question is, wouldn't it be easier and better for a society to still use the power of emotion, right? Because they are there anyway, but to use them to creative, positive emotion, and that would create more happiness and hope. What about that?
Yeah, well, that's very true. We need to do that. We need to focus on more positive emotions and things like compassion and gratitude, and we have to do these kinds of things. We recommend keeping a gratitude journal. What do you feel thankful for? Who are you compassionate toward? Can you be compassionate toward yourself? Giving people compliments. These are all important things, but they don't make the news.
Right.
You know, and you know why they don't make the news? Because people wouldn't watch the news, and you know, the people who broadcast the news wouldn't get any advertisers. They wouldn't make any money, but people are attracted to drama, emotion, even pain. They have issues with that. We're still traumatized by the various traumas in society, the unfortunate tragic shootings and deaths you read about. But we have to think, when there's, for example, the school shooting, and although it's very tragic and very sad, and in the US, there are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of elementary schools where there was not a shooting. But if we take a TV camera and show the classes and the teachers teaching a class and the kids running around having fun, do you think people would watch that on TV? Maybe for 5 minutes, but that's all, right?
That's the thing. Why we are not attracted like spontaneously to positive thing rather than negative news? Why that? Well,
pain hangs around longer in our feelings and in our memories than something positive. It impacts on us because it hurts to have some pain. And so we remember that, we feel that, we're worried about that, we're traumatized by that. So we want to prevent it and avoid it. But you're right. I think the positive part is very important too. And but positive tends to be a little more ambiguous and abstract. What do we call something positive? What would be an example? A strawberry sundae, a fun at a sporting event, an ice cream cone,
a hug, maybe.
Yeah. Going on a hike, having a picnic, watching the scenery, enjoying ourselves, just feeling in a good mood and doing what we want and having fun. Now, people will often associate positive things with some kind of, behavior like shopping. You've heard the phrase retail therapy. Well, I don't recommend retail therapy because
take note.
It's just a saying, and sure, it brings up good feelings. It's not that we shouldn't enjoy ourselves. And I was out, I like to go shopping myself, so it's fun. But on the other hand, you can come into issues. You can have issues if you think things should be in a certain way and they're not. It's hard for people now if prices are going up and people get cynical about prices. They get cynical about profits. about who's making the money, where my money goes. And cynicism is very common, and it hurts us. It's a defense mechanism, but it's also very common to have that. And it makes us feel powerful if we can start to feel suspicious and cynical about things and make some changes. So yeah, that's important. Unfortunately, we have to prepare for the negative things in life and handle them, and be prepared how to handle them. We should kind of approach situations with a ready-made way to handle things if something should go wrong, and because it can go wrong at any given moment. And so it's important to have a preparation for things. Not that we should be pessimistic or expect things negative all the time, because we can also expect things positive and enjoy ourselves, and be prepared to handle that too. Yeah, we have to be prepared to handle both. And
Exactly.
yeah, that's good. That's the way to handle it.
And
That's nice. Yeah.
and life is made of both, actually. It's made of situations that we are not expecting, let's say negative situations, and
Yeah.
positive too. But as you just emphasizes it, just controlling our reaction and, well, emotion and reaction to those events, right?
Yeah.
It is very powerful what you're saying. So I would like to emphasize your impressive career and why people should listen to what you're saying right now, because you have, as I said, an impressive career. So I would just like to do a little digression right
Sure.
here. So
Okay.
just so that people know that you have like 50 and plus years of experience, right, in this area. You
Yeah.
have served on boards of psychology in 2 Canadian provinces and on a national basis in Canada. You have received awards, right, for leadership
Yeah.
and advocacy.
Yeah.
You were head of psychology in an urban Canadian hospital for 18 years. You
Yeah.
also have been a clinical associate in Department of Psychiatry in the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Alberta. You have been an assistant professor at the University of Manitoba, clinical health psychology program. In the Faculty of Medicine, obviously, and you have supervised and trained students,
Yeah.
psychologists. So you have, as I said, like an impressive and wonderful career. So first, congratulations for that. And
Thank you. Yes.
I'd like to know, how did you know you wanted to be a doctor in psychology? Because all those things are very powerful. So how did you know you wanted to know more about the human and share all what you are sharing today?
Well, I think part of it was intuitive, in the sense of it was part of who I was even as a youngster. I was always interested in people and why they were doing things, and why trends were there. And I remember I didn't want to follow trends, even when I was a teenager, right? And so, yeah, I was an introvert, and I was very thinking a lot, analyzing things going on. And so it kind of came natural. And but what I wanted to do was just become interested in psychology. And then as I got more interested in it, I thought I could work in this field. And so I went to work in the field. I had to get a master's first. And so I got my master's and went to work in various areas. I worked in prisons and hospitals and other places. And then eventually I realized I had to have my PhD. So then I went back to university, came to Ottawa and did my PhD here. And yeah, and then I became Dr. Hutchison. Well, that was very, very good and powerful. I wanted to do that partly because, research shows that when you have the degree on the wall, people will listen to you. You're more effective as a person, as a therapist that way. So, and also, you couldn't be a psychologist without a PhD. As the time went on back in the 60s and 70s, I had to have a PhD. So I went to Ottawa for my PhD and then I went to Edmonton and Winnipeg, and I'm from Winnipeg, but I went around different places, and as our family moved and for different reasons. And but I was always successful at everything I did and everywhere I went. And yeah, and thank you for outlining my my achievements, my accomplishments. That's important. Yes,
It
yes.
is important. It is very important. You know what, Dr. Bruce Hutchison? I love the fact that you said you were an introvert. And that's interesting because as an introvert, you were able to take distance, from the turmoil, like from the
Yeah,
external events. So
yeah,
you were in a
yeah,
good
yeah,
position
yeah,
to stay.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
like
yeah,
it.
exactly, exactly. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I like to observe things and analyze it and comment on it, and I take some distance from it, but you still have to be involved in life. So the distance has to be partial, right? So you don't want to become too distant because that way you become too withdrawn. So again, that's a balance. It's important to have a balance in things in life. And so, yeah, you don't want to get too involved, but you don't want to become uninvolved either. Um, yeah,
That's a great advice. You also spoke about trends. And well, nowadays with all the social medias and everything, we can see a lot of trends happening. Like, I mean, there's a
yeah.
lot. Sometimes it's even difficult to follow the pace. Can you tell us how trends are created and why they are so trendy? Because I find it very interesting that you saw them, but you didn't want to participate in them. But we see a lot of people want to participate in the trends because they want to be involved. So
Yeah.
why that?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, you have to ask yourself what's in it. If they want to be involved, what's in it for them? Is it the emotion? Probably it is. Sometimes the emotion attracts people automatically. When they see an emotion or feel an emotion going on, they're drawn to it, and then they want to take part in it right away because the emotion drags them into it, and draws them, I should say, into it. And so, yeah. So I think that one of the reasons that trends occur is because of the emotion that comes up with charisma and popularity. They carry a lot of emotion, emotional contagion. The emotions are contagious. You feel the emotion from somebody else. The emotion rubs off on you, and you want some of it too. And then somebody else wants some of it too. So you think, I can get my emotional gratification this way. And a lot of that happens maybe because there's not so much emotional intimacy in life anymore, with family breakdown and things like that are happening. People are now turning to sources of society for the emotional gratification. And
Yes.
we saw that here in Canada with the convoy here in Ottawa, back in the winter, where people were there. They were looking for emotional gratification. They wanted to belong. Society is very competitive now, and so people who are kind of on the short end of the competition, they feel left out and they feel hurt, and they need to be recognized, and they need to be accepted and valued as well. I used to tell my patients that the most important occupation around us is the garbage man. And they would look at me strange and wonder why. Well, because if it weren't for garbage man, who would collect the garbage? And there'd be some disease out there before long. And before we know it, we'd all die. So
Well said. Well
yeah,
said.
yeah.
Definitely. I do appreciate what you just said, and I have a question for you again, obviously.
Okay, sure.
Well, for as we talked about your blog, so your blog it's on the website. Well, your website, so it's bruhut.com. So I invite people to go there. You write a
Right.
lot of posts, right? A lot of articles and
Yeah,
powerful materials. We even see comments where people can recognize themselves. So we see comments
right.
as this is exactly what I was looking for. Thank you for expressing my thoughts. So people are thanking you for sharing
Yes,
your
yes,
articles.
yes, yes. Yes, there's also a blog called emotionsdon'tthink.com.
Mhm.
And I also publish stuff on Psychology Today blogs and on Mad in America blogs. So my name is out there, and so I appreciate that. It's important to do that these days. There's also a couple of podcasts, and now you're going to put this one out there. So that's important to have that there too. And so because this has to get out there, I'm not so much concerned about myself. I'm concerned about the idea, the emotions, and that's why I've written the book. to emotions don't think, emotional contagion in a time of turmoil. And so that's important. And because I think that this is one of the reasons why we have all the turmoil in the world, because of the emotions that people are not controlling, not regulating, not aware of, not managing, and emotions split us. Divisiveness is caused by the emotions, because when you get into the emotional sense of, you really can't think clearly, and so you get divided into camps, good or bad, for or against. That's an emotional thing, and I don't, like you, I don't understand why it is that when psychologists show that cooperation gets more results than competition, why people are always competing instead of cooperating.
That's a good question.
Right? It's
That's
just
a good
the
question.
same thing as you're talking about being more positive and seeing the strength in each other. Why do we have to look for the negative in the other person and hold it against us and hold it against them as if we're better? That's crazy. We're all good people, most of us anyway. And so we all have good parts about us, and that we have to appreciate and respect. So that's important. Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for those wise and beautiful words. Well, I hope people will understand them, feel them,
Yeah,
talking about the
yeah,
feelings and emotion, but that they
yeah,
will feel those positive, this
yeah.
positive energy that
Good.
that you just sent through your words. Thank you so much, Dr. Bruce Hutchison. I would like to remind everybody that your book, Emotions Don't Think, Emotional Contagion in a Time of Turmoil, is available in the United States and in Canada on Amazon, or from Crossfield Publishing in Ontario. So as I said again, we can also visit your blog, so we will leave the website. Definitely, I invite people to visit it, because there's a lot of powerful material in
Sure.
there. And thank you for that, for sharing everything. Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Bruce Hutchison, for being here with us today. Thank you all for joining us for this beautiful edition of the Ottawa Book Expo. We are waiting for you on the 26th and the 28th of August.
And I
See
will
you
be
there.
there. I will be there with my book. Okay.
You definitely,
Okay.
we come to visit you, Doctor.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ursula. Pleasure to talk to you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.